The most powerful weapon any government can use to crush dissent is to restrict what you're allowed to say. In Orwell's 1984, the government didn't simply control your words, it watched you speak them. And in 2025, the UK has just passed sweeping new laws, supposedly to protect children online. But underneath the hood, it's a blueprint for censorship, a shift from privacy to permission, from open access to surveillance. And to absolutely nobody's surprise, this isn't only happening in the UK. Australia is next this coming December. Similar laws are taking shape in parts of the US. And if you think this won't reach your country, you haven't been paying attention. The premise of this law is rather dystopian, because the Online Safety Act doesn't only enforce age checks, it hands extraordinary power to Ofcom, a body that, until now, mostly dealt with broadcast standards and telecoms. It can demand changes to how platforms operate, force sites to remove or restrict access to content, and even order ISPs to block websites entirely with court approval. The real danger isn't simply in the enforcement, it's in the discretion. While the government says this is about protecting children, the Act gives Ofcom the authority to decide what counts as harmful, how platforms must deal with it, and how strictly they have to apply age gates. See where this is going? On top of defining what is in fact harmful, the Secretary of State can direct Ofcom to revise its codes of practice at any time in the name of public policy or national security, and platforms are legally obliged to follow.
Your personal information is being sold on the dark web. Spammers, scammers, companies, and identity thieves are targeting you. And the worst part? These criminals face zero consequences for what they're doing to you. The reality is, your personal information is out there, exposed and vulnerable. It's on you to protect yourself. That's why we trust and personally use Aura, today's sponsor. Aura does all the heavy lifting to keep you safe online. They take action against these data brokers and companies who are selling your personal information, going after them directly and submitting opt-out requests on your behalf. You don't have to lift a finger. Aura handles it. But that's not all. Here's where it gets even more serious. Aura doesn't just stop there. They continuously monitor the dark web for any trace of your personal data. If they find your information floating around in places it shouldn't be, Aura will alert you immediately. They'll let you know fast if anyone is trying to use that data to access your credit accounts or even drain bank accounts. And if the worst happens to you, Aura has you covered. They offer up to $5 million in identity theft insurance to help you recover if someone gets a hold of your information and tries to do real damage. Don't wait until it's too late. Head over to our link, aura.com/anonymous, to try Aura free for 14 days. That's plenty of time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data is exposed and start protecting you from these threats.
I could warn you about government overreach and shady corporations all day long, but you want to be mad at like one person. You want like to point your finger at one guy and go like, this is all your fault. Well, luckily there is a guy for that. It's Peter Thiel.
I think you would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
Yes?
I don't know. I would.
Yeah, that right there, that's Peter Thiel. And everything we talked about today leads right to him. If you use Persona to verify your age before you watch some, that information belongs to Peter Thiel now, whose founders fund is one of the largest investors in the company. When your kids take photos of themselves so they can use voice chat in Roblox, Roblox uses Persona as well. So Peter Thiel's got photos of your kids, dude. Hey, do you want to see footage on Reddit of the Jen and God? Well, Reddit uses Persona for age verification. So Peter Thiel now knows that you're a little troublemaker and you're going to be classified as such in his Foundry system, and then the next Waymo you take is going to go off a fucking bridge. I'm just saying, it's all Peter Thiel, who wants to create a police state so that democracy doesn't get in the way of his stupid fucking mission to live forever or whatever. And the only way to get there is to create infrastructure that tracks everybody's movements online so that you can infinitely control them. That's what all of this is about. And you can blame Peter Thiel.
The way the Antichrist would take over the world is you talk about Armageddon nonstop. You talk about existential risk nonstop. And this is what you need to regulate. And this is where, I don't know, in the 17th century, I can imagine a Dr. Strangelove, Edward Teller type person taking over the world. In our world, it's far more likely to be Greta Thunberg.
I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done. The irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival.
There are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing. Is this so preposterous, what I've just told you, as a broad account of the stagnation that the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism? This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety, and we've submitted. We could never win an election on getting certain things because we were in such a small minority. But maybe you could actually unilaterally change the world without having to constantly convince people and beg people and plead with people who are never going to agree with you through a technological means. And this is where I think technology is this incredible alternative to politics.
That's tech billionaire and Republican megadonor Peter Thiel. He's basically saying that his political ideology is so unappealing that it'll never win elections. And that's one thing he's right about, because he's railed against women having the right to vote. But he knows that he can use technology as a unilateral alternative to politics, and that should really freak you out. Thiel is one of the co-founders and biggest investors in Palantir, a CIA-funded technology company that has contracts across the government for their data software. Here's their CFO speaking a few years ago.
We continue to advance our mission of becoming the U.S. government's central operating system as we extend our footprint across defense, healthcare, and civilian agencies.
And this is the CEO.
The central risk to Palantir and America and the world is a regressive way of thinking that is corrupting and corroding our institutions, that calls itself progressive, but actually, and is called woke, but is actually a form of a thin pagan religion.
Are these the people you want running the systems you rely on, or worse, the systems that surveil you?
Here's how it actually works. If a platform hosts a significant amount of this so-called priority content, it now has a legal obligation to block under 18s from accessing it. That means they have to verify your age with proof. And the law doesn't only apply to sites. It applies to social platforms like Reddit and X, which now asks UK users to upload a passport or a live selfie through third-party firms before viewing certain content. If a site doesn't comply, it faces fines of up to £18 million or 10% of its global revenue. In some cases, Ofcom, the UK's media regulator, can even order the entire site to be blocked. So now, a growing number of sites are responding in one of two ways. Either they start forcing users to verify their identity using face scans or ID uploads, or they can block UK users entirely to avoid the legal and financial risk. This brings me to privacy. These age checks aren't handled by the platforms themselves. They're outsourced to verification companies like Yoti, KWS, and Persona, private firms you've probably never heard of. These companies collect, process, and verify sensitive data. They say they delete it after a few days, but you don't get to choose your provider, and you don't really know where your data goes.
What is deemed legal or not is effectively being handed to the tech companies, because it's not retail staff. It's not retail staff. It's not retail staff who make a determination about who to arrest and who not to. It is the police who do that, and then it's the judiciary who then make a call on it. And I will say this too, as someone who's run a business, right? If you create a perverse incentive, which is what this bill does, look at the penalties, 10% of global revenues. These are global platforms of which the UK is an infinitesimal proportion of their revenue. Look at the penalties for management, potential jail time. If you create those perverse incentives, what are they going to do? They're going to be over-censorious. They're going to be overzealous. Why? Because that is the rational thing to do. Anyone who has not, it isn't Elon Musk himself who makes these decisions. It is AI algorithms. It is AI algorithms. It is AI algorithms that make these decisions. It is AI algorithms that make these decisions writ large. And what you are now doing, if you don't trust the tech companies, then this is the last act that you would want to support, because what has happened now is it is Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and every social media magnate that will make a determination as to what British people can or cannot see, because you have created legislation here that says any content that is, quote, legal but harmful must be taken down, lest the management teams face jail.
The internet just ended anonymous browsing forever. Reddit, Discord, X, and Blue Sky now require government ID to prove you're over 18 for certain content. Here's what's terrifying. These sites use third-party companies to store your ID photos, and they're already getting hacked. One identity verification service used by TikTok, Uber, and X left user information and driver's license photos exposed for months. 404 Media found the breach. There's no standardization. Every site uses different companies with different security standards. Some promise to delete your data in 7 days, others no guarantee at all. But it gets worse. The Supreme Court just ruled in 2025 that adults have no First Amendment right to avoid age verification. Your Reddit comments tied to your driver's license. Your Discord chats tied to your real name. Anonymous browsing is dead.
Australia is set to quietly introduce unprecedented age verification checks for search engines such as Google, without the consent of the Australian people. What started as concern for children on social media has rapidly expanded to mandatory, wide-ranging, biometric age checking across the digital landscape. For what reason? Safety? I don't buy that. I'm sure you don't believe it. Instead of waiting to see how the under-16 social media ban goes, if it works, if it's possible, if it helps, if the public rejects it, instead of waiting, they're already trying to push through an entire framework of nanny state, privacy-destroying restrictions on the internet. Google and Microsoft will implement age assurance technology. Sounds good, doesn't it? Age assurance technology under threat of a $50 million fine. This verification will be used to automatically censor an unspecified range of content. Some of it adult, a lot of it not adult. There's no provision to prevent this default age-centered censorship extending to so-called misinformation and disinformation. They could hide anything from the search results. Did you vote for that? Enough is enough. We need to have a talk about digital overreach and the misuse of child safety as a means to control access to the digital world.
If you oppose the Online Safety Act, you are on the side of predators. That is what a UK government MP tweeted last night. And I swear to God, this might be the most deranged, manipulative bullshit that I've seen this government spew out yet. Calling your own citizens predators just because they dare to criticise your shiny new surveillance Trojan horse, that is not governance. That's like a toddler throwing a tantrum whilst they're holding the nuclear codes. It is straight up regime language. You don't support our law? Well, then you must be evil. You question us? Well, clearly you want to see children harmed. According to this guy, that makes me a sympathizer now because I don't want to scan my face every time I want to look at Wikipedia. It is a cheap, cynical move. Wrap a bad law in it, but think of the children, and anyone who disagrees can be branded a monster. Classic authoritarian playbook. But the reality is that the people pushing back on this act aren't predators. They're parents, they're tech experts, and they're privacy advocates. They're just ordinary citizens who understand what this law actually is, a massive fucking power grab dressed up as safety. This law gives the state and unaccountable third parties access to your data, your face, your emails, and your private encrypted messages. And because the government knows that, their response isn't to address the criticism, it's to smear anyone raising the alarm. Because if they admitted that the act threatens free speech, privacy, and basic civil rights, the whole thing falls apart. So instead, they weaponize shame. If you disagree, you're with the predators. And the dangerous part is, once a government starts branding anyone who disagrees as the problem, the whole thing falls apart. Today it might be support the Online Safety Act or you're with the predators, but tomorrow it might be support the surveillance law or you're with the terrorists. Fuck that, fuck this narrative, and fuck a government that's so drunk on power that it thinks that it can blame anyone who disagrees with any of their laws, a sympathizer, and get away with it.
Unsurprisingly, the fallout began almost instantly. Wikipedia was one of the major platforms to push back. The Wikimedia Foundation refused to implement age checks, arguing it would violate the anonymity and privacy of its global volunteer editors. Instead of complying, they threatened legal action against Ofcom. Meanwhile, other platforms didn't fight. They just shut the doors. They've made it clear they would rather lose the UK audience entirely than risk multi-million-pound fines or hand over their users' personal data to verification brokers. So what did people do? They did what anyone under a surveillance regime tries first. They looked for the exit, and that exit was a VPN. The day the Online Safety Act took effect, VPN downloads in the UK exploded.
What we actually haven't talked about here is this act makes children less safe. The evidence of that is 4 of the top 5 most downloaded apps in the Apple App Store as we speak are VPNs. These are virtual networks that allow children to spoof their location anywhere in the world. The 13 to 16-year-olds, anyone who's encountered a 13 to 16-year-old these days will tell you they will run rings around most baby boomers who draft this legislation.
Proton VPN, a privacy-focused provider, saw an 1,800% spike in signups and downloads overnight, jumping straight to number 1 on the UK App Store, ahead of TikTok, WhatsApp, and even ChatGPT. Other providers like NordVPN and ExpressVPN also reported 10x surges in UK traffic. By the weekend, half of the top 10 apps on the App Store were VPNs.